Well, my beautiful family, here we are. Welcome. Come on in. Hit the like button. I don't care if you ain't heard a word from me yet. Hit the like button. I have gave you the age of Aries. We have visited the Aryan age, my family. We went through the zodiacs. We went through the chakras, my family. We went through the Piscean age, the age that we have left. And now, of course, you can see by the title, my beautiful family, we are here now in the age of Aquarius. I want to welcome you all to the Cosmic Christ University, the greatest university of our time. I want to take my time with this presentation. I want to focus right quick on my viewers, on you. How is your life right now? I'm being dead serious. How is your life right now in this current moment? Are bills getting on your nerves? Are families getting on your nerves? Are you getting on your own nerves? Do you feel like there's a stagnation? I like to check on my family members. I'm not just calling you my brothers and sisters because it sounds cool. We come from a royal lineage, children of God, co creators of the source. So, the reason I want to check on you because I have given you the chakras, astrology 101, the zodiacs, their correlation to you. Before we go into this Aquarian age information, I want to check on you to see where you at this time, especially for the ones who took the time out there busy external life to come into the university and know more about the zodiacs, know more about the chakras, know more about yourself. Because I'm about to drop some life changing information, just like I've done in the other videos. Remember, the Aries age, or yeah, the Aries, excuse me, I don't know why I put the I in there. The Aries age, the age of Aries, was about tribal consciousness. That's family, that's social structure, that's survival as a group. The Piscean age gave us individual consciousness. Now we're moving on to the Aquarian age, my beautiful family, where we are dealing with symbolic power and, of course, headed back to a unified consciousness. Before I start this amazing presentation, you're going to learn some new things about yourself and about this civilization that we call planet Earth, Western and Eastern civilization. So I want you to sit back. We don't have to time travel today. We don't have to take a field trip. We are in the Aquarian age right now. So I want to thank you for your patience. Let's get ready to get started. Once again, you are now tuned into one of the greatest universities, the Cosmic Christ University. My family, this is the home of the esoteric, which means hidden knowledge, and the metaphysics. Let's go. The age of Aquarius, symbolic power. Just as the tribal or Aryan mind has not completely disappeared from the Piscean age, the Piscean mind will still manifest itself in the Aquarian age. But in the late 1950s and early 1960s, two events occurred that represented a global mind shift and gave millions of people a divine permission to walk down previously restricted spiritual corridors. Now, my beautiful people watching, at 4 minutes, you have just heard that there were two spiritual events in the 50s and the 60s that changed, that shifted the paradigm of how we think consciously. It helped further assist us to where we're at now spiritually. So, going on 5 minutes, I need you locked in on this information because once I go in, I'm going to go in. Some of you may have never even heard of these two events at all. And if you have, hit the like button. And if you haven't, and if you're a Netflix producer or you produce your own movies or series, then please, you might want to do a documentary on this. I'm going to start from the beginning. Just as the tribal or Aryan mind has not completely disappeared from the Piscean age, the Piscean mind will still manifest itself in the Aquarian age. But in the late 1950s and early 1960s, two events occurred that represented a global mind shift and gave millions of people a divine permission to walk down previously restricted spiritual corridors. Corridors is spelled Corridors. Let's go back in. In 1959, in 1959, what year? Okay. In 1959, the invasion of Tibet by the Chinese communists forced the Dalai Lama to flee his homeland and take up residence in India, where he is still based today, although he has become an active figure on the world stage as well. What year again? All right. Just 3 years later, what's that, 1962? Just 3 years later, what's that, 1962? Family, just 3 years later, Pope John the 23rd hosted a gathering of cardinals at the Second Vatican Council, where church leaders worked to bring the Catholic Church into the modern age. Viewing these events literally, one would not immediately draw any connection between them. Yet, taken together and seen from a symbolic point of view, these two events represent an infusion of mystical spirituality into the mainstream of modern life and signal the beginning of the merger of Eastern and Western spiritual traditions. I'm going to stop and check on y'all to make sure we're good because we're not even close to this powerful presentation, obviously. Y'all good? My brothers and sisters, I love you guys. Are you good? Of course, let's go back in. As thousands of Buddhist monks in Tibet were compelled to turn to the outside world for support, many of them offered in exchange the exceedingly rich trove, Trove, of scriptures and teachings that had been stored in their monasteries. Let's keep on reading. Likewise, one of the unintended consequences, listen to the words, of the Vatican II was that a large number of religious Roman Catholics, perhaps disillusioned by the council's liberalization of rules, they gave up their clerical orders and re-entered lay life. To any Netflix producers watching, to any producers at all, film directors, this needs to be documented because we are giving two events, one in 1959 in Tibet with the Buddhist monks, and 3 years later with the priests, the nuns, and the monks. Or the priests and the nuns. This is very important. So I'm going to read that part again, and as I read, my beautiful family, I want you to picture thousands of Buddhist monks leaving their monasteries. Tibet is a place that I was supposed to go right after I left Cairo, Egypt in 2019. I was supposed to go right straight there, but there was something called COVID that was reaching China before it reached America, and it blocked my plane ticket. True story. But in Tibet, some of these monasteries, family, are in the highest of mountains. If you watch Ancient Aliens or any Discovery Channel footage on these places, they have caves or monasteries all the way up top. And up top, these monks are there with this sacred knowledge that nobody, damn sure in the Western civilization, is privy to. If you know anything about Tibet, shout out to Nyaching. If you know anything about Tibet, you have to go. It's the highest elevation. Let's read this again, and to the viewer watching me, I'm real big on using your imagination and visualization. I want you to imagine this. In 1959, these monks leaving these sacred places, and in exchange for help, they are giving us these rich, ancient scriptures. And then we're going to hear. Then when you hear about the priest, and 3 years later, when the freaking Catholics are trying to, adapt to the modern times, you got some priests who just left, disillusioned, it said, and I'm gonna let you listen to the rest of them. As thousands of Buddhist monks in Tibet were compelled to turn to the outside world for support, many of them offered in exchange the exceedingly rich trove of scriptures and teachings that had been stored in their monasteries. Likewise, one of the unattended consequences of the Vatican II was that a large number of religious Roman Catholics, perhaps disillusioned by the council's liberalization of rules, gave up their clerical orders and re-entered lay life. Listen to this. Many of these priests, monks, and nuns had pursued advanced degrees. Metaphysician, me being a metaphysician, me studying metaphysics, me being a minister, ordained minister, about to become a doctor in metaphysics. That is an advanced degree. It is a higher degree than any Orthodox preacher. They just give you Orthodox teachings. Even if they know esoteric teachings, they're not going to tell you, congregation, because it would go against everything that you've been taught since you were born. But the priest in those Vaticans, those nuns, they know the stuff that the minister talks about, and some of them more, some of them less, because I'll really go in. So think about that. You have two different sets, one in the Eastern civilization, one in the Western. At that time, in the beginning of the ages of Aquarius, leaving the Piscean age, old information had to be released. So let's keep on going. Now, thank you for your patience. This is what we're learning before we get to the juicy stuff. Many of these priests, monks, and nuns had pursued advanced degrees in theology and were privy to the classic writings and teachers of the great Christian mystics. As they found their way back into the mainstream of Western society, they carried these teachings with them and spread them to the public in a way they might not have ever done had they remained in their relatively cloistered religious lives. And before I go on, I really want to make sure that my preachers, my theologians, my bishops, that you understand what I am saying here. No shade, but if you think it's shade, oh well. You have been telling your congregation, the churches, you have been told that all that you have been taught is it. That's it. God is all. God is Father, not knowing there's a divine feminine part to God too. Not knowing about Lilith, not knowing about Sophia the Wisdom, not knowing about King Solomon's connection to Yeshua, not knowing that Yeshua and Mary got married and had kids. Like this is very important stuff for our spiritual growth. But if you don't know this and you're a part of a cult, most people who are in church, they're a part of a cult because that cult, C-U-L-T, not to be confused with occultism, which means hidden knowledge, the cult won't allow you to let your mind grow and be liberated. It keeps you in a stagnant mind frame and you not knowing the inner God. That's why Christ, Yeshua, the one you call Jesus, called those same people that you listen to Sundays and whatever days you go to church, he called them hypocrites in red letters. Them. So it's the irony of everybody saying Jesus, 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 God, 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 and the same people who crucified Yeshua are the same people that you go get your information from. Whoa! 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 Why call me Lord and not do the things I ask of you is what Yeshua said. The kingdom is within you. I came face to face in God and it was the pineal, the third eye, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland. What are you talking about, man? My God. Let's keep on going. Let's keep on going. As they found their way back into the mainstream, we're talking about the nuns, the priests, and the monks. As they found their way back into the mainstream of Western society, they carried these teachings with them and spread them to the public in a way they might never have done had they remained in their relatively cloistered religious lives. Let's keep on going. As a result of these seemingly unrelated events, the mystical teachings of both the Eastern and Western spiritual traditions became available to ordinary people. In the mid-1960s, when? In the mid-1960s, family when? Awesome, thank you. In the mid-1960s, this process was further aided in the United States by the lifting of immigration barriers that had been in place since 1917. A wave of Indian masters were able to reach our shores just as the spirit of liberation sweeping the country made American minds receptive to the power of their teachings. Shout out to the Hopi tribe, by the way. Shout out to every Native American tribe. Shout out to my ancestors, the Hopi tribe. In the Hayoki tribe. In the mid-1960s, this process was further aided in the United States by the lifting of immigration barriers that had been in place since 1917. A wave of Indian masters were able to reach our shores just as the spirit of liberation sweeping the country made American minds receptive to the power of their teachings. At the same time, the Christian churches were experiencing a revolution from within. As women demanded the right to be ordained as priests and ministers, and the laity insisted on more inclusion in both the rituals of the church and its decision-making processes. This opening of the clerical authority structure had begun centuries earlier with the Protestant Reformation. Not long after that, the Reform movement with Judaism had had a similar effect on large numbers of Jews. But in the West, at least mysticism had remained largely submerged in the popular consciousness. That now changed radically. Religion may still be essentially tribal, but in the Piscean tradition, let's read that again, my family. Religion may be essentially tribal, and what it means by that, remember when we did the Aries presentation, it was about tribal consciousness. So that means social group, family structure, survival, people being dominated by a family structure or a tribal structure. Remember, in the Piscean age, it was about individual consciousness. So you leave in that tribal consciousness to now know your own self, know your own liberation. So, once again, religion may still be essentially tribal, as we can definitely tell. Religion may still be essentially tribal, but in the Piscean transition to Aquarius, we're here now, family, it is beginning to operate at a much more conscious level and with unprecedented individual freedom. At 17 minutes, I want to read that again because that's why I asked you, my brothers and sisters, how are you doing? How are you feeling? I know what this world is giving you as far as an illusion. Remember, it's Maya. The Hindu told you it was Maya. This is an illusion. You're lost. Some of you are in the glamour. But the essence of who you are is more divine, more spiritual. And as we hit the age of Aquarius, now you're going to see how powerful and how valuable your worth is. Religion may still be essentially tribal, but in the Piscean transition to Aquarius, it is beginning to operate at a much more conscious level and with unprecedented individual freedom. Modern spirituality, with its more intimate connection with God, I want to say that again. Modern spirituality, with its more intimate connection with God, has inspired an inner passion that goes beyond the boundaries of patriarchal religion. As institutional religion loses ground, not my words, the author words, the beautiful Miss Caroline Miss, you can find her on YouTube. But has the minister been saying this? Yeah, I told you it was 86 for the churches. I told you it was a rat for Orthodox religion. I told you all that before, but nobody listened. Nobody listened at all. Not one bit. But listen to Mrs. Caroline words. Listen to Miss Caroline words. Religion may still be essentially tribal, but in the Piscean transition to Aquarius, it is beginning to operate at a much more conscious level and with unprecedented individual freedom. Modern spirituality, with its more intimate connection with God, has inspired an inner passion that goes beyond the boundaries of patriarchal religion. As institutional religion loses ground, Spirituality is gaining momentum. For you watching now at 20 minutes, I want you to get that through that head of yours, whether you are a church person or not. It says, once again, as institutional religion, that is Orthodox religion, mainstream religion, as institutional religion loses ground, spirituality is getting momentum. A spirituality that is more universalist in orientation than the creeds that preceded it. The New Age has proven itself open to a staggering range of spiritual traditions and practices, and even within mainstream religions, the trend toward ecumenism, that is spelled Ecumenism, accepting others' path and traditions as valid and worthy of respect, has accelerated. Through this shift in focus, my family, the word consciousness has come to denote the pursuit of the deepest mystical insights in combination with rationality and freedom. I want to make sure I read that again. Through the shift in focus, the word consciousness has come to denote the pursuit of the deepest mystical insights in combination with rationality and freedom, armed with a vocabulary that was previously restricted to monastics and mystics. Western culture has broken through the boundaries of religion and begun plunging largely unescorted into the realm of the sacred. I'm going to read that again because I hope this information is getting through your thick skull. You are praising a ghost in church, not knowing that God is within you, even though the master teacher Yeshua tried to tell you that. The same one that you give all your money and all your energy to in churches are the same ones that had him killed because they didn't want you to know that he was right about your inner power. If you know that you are God and that you are a co-creator with God, why do you need to go to church and give them your money when all you got to do is say, God is my abundance and money's coming out of your pocket? What are you talking about? Armed with a vocabulary that was previously restricted to monastics and mystics, I'm a mystic. Our teacher, Yeshua, had no religion. He was a mystic. Western culture has broken through the boundaries of religion. Congratulations, Western. That's us, by the way. I'm not knocking you, church people, but you don't want to go know your truth. You don't want to know who Christ really is. So keep on being zombies, especially you black zombies. Western culture has broken through the boundaries of religion and begun plunging largely unscorted. We don't need nobody. We don't need nobody to assist us. Let us find our freedom. Yes, we're unescorted. We're discovering all this with nobody guiding us, with nobody trying to kidnap the spiritual traditions and the spiritual teachings that Christ had for us, that Yeshua, that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon whom, that Buddha, that Krishna. They wanted us to have this, not to be held captive by it. Plato, Pythagoras, they wanted us to have this. Now, not only do we want to know about the Kundalini, how many of you want to know about the Kundalini? Huh? That energy that rises from the back of the spine that goes up and reaches the crown chakra. How many of you really want to know about that? Huh? Not only do we want to know about the Kundalini experience, reincarnation, meditation, and spiritual ecstasy, we want to live them. We want the power of these spiritual teachings to activate our biological tissue. We want to feel the presence of God in our bodies as well as in our minds. We want physical contact with the divine, matching to the level of contact previously enjoyed by saints and mystics of the great tradition. That's what we want, right? You hit that like button right now. That's what you want. You hit that like button right now. That's what you want. You want me to read it again and make sure that's what you want? I'll do that. Not only do we want to know about the Kundalini experience, reincarnation, meditation, and spiritual ecstasy, we want to live them. We want the power of these spiritual teachings to activate our biological tissue. We want to feel the presence of God in our bodies as well as in our minds. We want physical contact with the divine, matching the level of contact previously enjoyed by saints and mystics of the great traditions. At around the time these changes were taking place in spirituality and religion, we experienced, the author says, what I call a global mind implant. IMPLANT. We know what an implant is. Implant. We know what that means. Now listen to that one more time. At around the time these changes were taking place in spirituality and religion, we experienced what I call a global mind implant, a kind of 100 monkey syndrome, the author says. A new perception became accepted in human consciousness. Did you know that? This is why I say if you don't know your stuff, you got some rappers telling you that you don't need to read. You got people say you don't need to read. Read. Pick up a book. At around the time these changes were taking place in spirituality and religion, we experienced what I call a global mind implant, a kind of 100 monkey syndrome. A kind of 100 monkey syndrome. A new perception became accepted in human consciousness, one that has characteristics of Aquarian energy. The idea that we create our own reality. This single notion inspired an entirely new view of the potential of human power in every part of human life. As we saw in chapter 1, the corollary, COROLLARY, of this idea is the belief that we create our own health. Now I got to read it again. The corollary of this idea is the belief that we create our own health and can affect our own healing. Let's keep on reading. This perception is characteristic of Aquarian energy. So we right here now, family. I hope you are listening to this. So when you've been hearing me video after video saying that you were about to get your spiritual powers, you were about to activate, it's about to get real for you. Here's your receipts if you were looking for them throughout my videos. As new perception became accepted in human consciousness, one that has characteristics of Aquarian energy, the idea that we create our own reality, the single notion inspired an entirely new view of potential of human power in every part of human life. As we saw in chapter 1, the corollary of this idea is the belief that we create our own health and can affect our own healing. This perception is characteristics of Aquarian energy because Aquarius is an air sign, and air is the astrological element associated with the mind, new ideas, and fresh thought. Where the Piscean energy, symbolized by two fish swimming in opposite directions, represent the separation of forces, Aquarian energy underlines holism, HOLISM, the need to unite groups of people as well as groups of thought. Aquarian consciousness is holistic by design, meaning that it draws people to view life through the lens of unity rather than the lens of differences and division. Holism, once again, HOLISM, a word invented by South African statesman named Jan Christian Smuts. True name, Jan is what it says. Jan Christian with an extra A, Smuts. SMUTS, in 1926, reflects an ancient principle that, and I quote, all is one, end quote, teaching us that we cannot, for instance, heal part of an organism. We cannot heal part of an organism without treating the whole of it. Just so, the holistic health movement seeks to heal illness by addressing not symptoms, but the whole organism, through diet, exercise, and a wide range of complementary treatments. I just want to take this time to give a shout out to everybody who has improved their health, who has leveled up. The doctor told you this, but now guess what? You leveled up so much that the doctor can't find nothing wrong with you, and you done leveled up. So I want to thank you for putting the work in, and God is proud of you, so be proud of yourself. As we move closer to the Aquarian age, family, these principles have begun to enter the mainstream of medicine. Aquarian energy drives us to change every part of our lives. I'm gonna say this because remember, and now let me state this for my church people right quick. I'm gonna get right back to the presentation. For my church people watching, you may not heard of the Aquarian age before, so you're like, Aquarian age? Well, listen, in your Bible, and you can find the scripture, the disciples asked Jesus, the one you call Jesus, his mama named Yeshua, so I'm gonna do the same thing. Ask Yeshua, well, when can we expect your return? That's what the disciples asked Christ. And I'm going to paraphrase, but he said, look for the man with the water pitcher tipped over. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's in the Bible. He said, look for the man with the water bottle or the water pitcher tipped over. Christ was a mystic. You have to understand that. He left his home at an early age to go to Egypt to learn from the ancient mystery schools, magic, magic with a K, not with a C, and then he learned Tibet Reiki healing and things among that. So when he came back, he was on one. So what he told him was astrology, because once you look at the constellation of Aquarius, what do you see? So if you have never seen the Aquarius constellation, let me know what you see and get back with me on that. That's how powerful Christ, the one you call Jesus, was. He was teaching them about his return would be in the age of Aquarius, where we're at right now. So let's keep on going. Aquarian energy drives us to change every part of our lives, especially where we have become too dependent on the familiar and to investigate every unknown place we can find. That's why a lot of you feel that. You feel the stagnation. You feel like you could be doing more with your life. That's because at the age of Aquarius, we should be doing more with our life. We should be elevating and bossing up. Particularly those with ourselves. So let's read that again. Aquarian energy drives us to change every part of our lives, especially where we have become too dependent on the familiar and to investigate every unknown place we can find, particularly those within ourselves. Aquarian power fuels our exploration of our higher selves, quote unquote, our higher selves, or the part of us that is beyond the boundaries of our physical bodies and the daily thrum, THRUM, of life. It embodies an energy that can lift human perception into symbolic sight. The energy fills us with the sensation that we are exquisitely creative beings with eternal resources powerful enough to heal illness that have always been considered intractable and to challenge the speed at which we age. I'm going to read that again, of course. But church people, spiritual people, this should really rekindle if it has put out. But it really should rekindle the love you have for the one they call Jesus. Don't get thrown off because they changed his name to match a 888 frequency. His name is Yeshua, Ethiopian bloodline, connected to King Solomon and King David. This is the truth right here. This is the truth. Let's read that again. Let's read that again. But hold up. Christ was trying to tell you that the kingdom of heaven is within you. This is being confirmed about what he was saying, that you have to go within. And the Aquarian energy is symbolic. Your powers are symbolic. You have to go within yourself to get your powers. Let's keep reading. I'm going to read that again. Aquarian power fuels our exploration of higher selves, or the part of us that is beyond the boundaries of our physical bodies and the daily thrum of life. It embodies an energy that can lift human perception into symbolic sight. This energy fills us with the sensation that we are exquisitely creative beings with eternal resources powerful enough to heal illness that have always been considered intractable and to challenge the speed at which we age. Stop saying you're getting older. To my students and my masters and my brothers and sisters, which you all are, here's my advice to you. Instead of saying you're getting older, switch it around. Use this. The longer I live. Because now, if you say you are getting older, you are getting older. But if you say the longer I live, you are putting more longevity. You're giving yourself more life. Think about that. Now, where were we? As the Aquarian energy was beginning to make itself felt in the 1960s, what year are we at? 2025, right? Listen to what the author just says. As the Aquarian energy was beginning to make itself felt in the 1960s, it inspired massive social revolution. Think about the music. Think about the music. To my 60s, to my 70, 80-year-olds, to my 60s, 70s, 80 years old, think about that age y'all had. The Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, The Doors, James Brown, Gil Scott, Oh my, Sam Cooke. Like I'm revolutionaries. Come on now. I can keep going. Help me out, some of y'all. Think about the music. Barry White. Think about that. Think about that. Listen to this. As the Aquarian energy was beginning to make itself felt in the 1960s, it inspired massive social revolution. Not yet familiar with how to use the power internally, we used it externally. As the Aquarian energy was beginning to make itself felt in the 1960s, it inspired massive social revolution. Not yet familiar with how to use this power internally inside, we used it externally in the form of the sexual revolution, the feminist movement, the civil rights, and the anti-war movements, the counterculture, drug culture, developing a voice that eventually became the psycho-spiritual revolution. What is that Beatles song? I think it's Revolution, right? It's Evolution or Revolution. I think it's Revolution. Revolution, well, you know. Right? I want to read that again because it's so poetic to know that. Because for the ones, the flower childs and the hippies, you know this. So if you guys are in this age group, you better hit the like button like you never hit the like button before, because we're giving y'all a shout out. Because y'all was the ones who put us where we needed to be through the help of God. Let's read that again. As the Aquarian energy was beginning to make itself felt in the 1960s, it inspired massive social revolution. Not yet familiar with how to use this power internally, we used it externally in the form of the sexual revolution, the feminist movement, the civil rights and anti-war movements, the counterculture, drug culture, developing a voice that eventually became the psycho-spiritual revolution. People became inflamed with the need to break away from anything conventional, anything that kept the old boundaries firmly in place around the mind and heart. It was the beginning of transition from Homo sapiens to Homo noeticus, Noeticus. That is, from beings whose perceptions are controlled by the five senses to beings whose perceptions are based on spiritual insight and vision. So what are we going to get in this Aquarian age? Perceptions are based on spiritual insight and vision. That's what we're about to get. Just as the astrological ages of Aries and Pisces each introduced a new phase of consciousness into the human experience, tribal and individual, respectively, the Aryan age is introducing a belief system that is essentially holistic. It relies on a unity of physical, emotional, psychological, and symbolic interpretations. Beyond its capacities to inspire us to solve problems differently, holistic consciousness unlocks our ability to see events in symbolic terms rather than, and I quote, taking them personally, end quote. Aquarian energy is more logical and system-driven than emotional Piscean power. This does not mean that it is unemotional. Rather, it takes a practical approach to problem solving because of its solution-driven nature. Aquarian energy is drawn to humanitarian causes and the crisis of the underdog. The many causes that have surfaced during the past 30 years, the author says, the many causes that have surfaced during the past 30 years in behalf of social groups that lack equal rights are manifestations of Aquarian energy penetrating into the mainstream of society. I want to read that again because it kind of hit, I got a hit somewhere. The many causes that have surfaced during the past 30 years in behalf of social groups that lacked equal rights. Social groups that lack equal rights. Social groups that lacked equal rights. The many causes that have surfaced during the past 30 years in behalf of social groups that have lacked equal rights are manifestations of Aquarian energy penetrating into the mainstream of society. Aquarius is the ruler of an astrological term meaning in charge of family. At 39 minutes, listen to this. Bet you some of you don't know this. Aquarius is the ruler of an astrological term meaning in charge of, aka electricity. And electricity is energy. The symbol of Aquarius is the water barrier water, being the natural conductor of electricity energy. And remember, I just hit it at a while ago, talking about Christ and disciples. The symbol of Aquarius is the water barrier. Water being the natural conductor of electricity. Let me read that again. Aquarius is the ruler of the astrological term, meaning in charge of. In charge of. Also, electricity, aka electricity. And electricity is energy. The symbol of Aquarius is the water barrier. Water being the natural conductor of electrical energy. Symbolically, Aquarian impulses are driving us to understand the very role that energy plays in our lives, how it cooperates with our physical anatomy, how the lack of it can cause illness, and how it can heal us. We are beginning to think of ourselves as energy systems, and we are seeking to understand how our energy systems relate to all other forms of life. Because of our increasing reliance on the transmission of information, the coming millennium has already been labeled the, and I quote, information age, end quote. Yet information in the sense of data transmission is just a more conventional word for energy. The internet, email, fax machines, and cable and satellite television are all making real the genuine unification of our global community. And may I add TikTok? And may I add TikTok? In Marshall McLuhan's increasingly apt phrase, the global village, quote unquote, it makes perfect sense that one of the Chinese government's top priorities in attempting to control its population is to restrict access to the World Wide Web. Damn. You don't have to be a New Age believer to see that the power is rapidly shifting from a physical force to one of thought and energy, the essence of a computerized society. Chinese, to my Chinese government family, that's not the reason y'all build a fake sun, is it? Because you know there's a sun behind the sun, which is the spiritual sun. So you Chinese government, you guys, I know you guys wouldn't be trying to block the spiritual sun for reaching the people on the planet so they can get their powers. I know you guys wouldn't do that. Miss Carolyn, somebody better talk to me. As I was doing, the author says, as I was doing intuitive readings in the late 1980s, I recognized that I was perceiving information that was far more symbolic in nature than the more grounded information. I had become accustomed to evaluating, she says. Eventually, I realized that I had made contact with the eighth chakra, one that was transcendent of the body proper, so to speak. The eighth chakra contains a profile of the archetypal influences that are very much a part of a person's spiritual development and everyday life experiences. The author says, the more I work with this archetypal information, the more I realize that symbolic perceptual abilities are the essence of the Aquarian energy. Our unconscious dimension actually seems to be pressing to come out into the open. Did you guys hear that in 42 minutes? Our unconscious dimension actually seems to be pressing to come out into the open. The archetypal agreements we make prior to incarnating, prior to being born, which I refer to author says to as a sacred contract, seems to have positioned us to heal far more rapidly than any other tool I have so far encountered. This helped explain why during the past 30 years, numerous psychologists, many inspired by the work of the great Carl Jung, Jung, have done substantial research into the archetypes. And I will be doing a presentation for the ones watching. I'm going to do a presentation called The Devil Made Me Do It. And it's going to be about what's really real. Not the devil, but the archetypes that control your life. So stay tuned to that one as well. By making contact with the archetypal realm, we acquire the language by which we could bring into conscious awareness the unconscious realm that is intimately woven into our everyday life patterns. The child, wounded healer, warrior, wild woman, and hero, for examples, are but a handful of many archetypes that have been introduced into our therapeutic arena as working voices to assist people in understanding symbolic choreography behind their very real physical problems. You thought it was the devil the whole time doing this, but it's the archetypes. Let's keep reading again. Symbolic perception allows us to see that the real meaning of a crisis lies in showing us that we need to learn about ourselves. To blame the other player in our drama for helping to teach us what we need to learn is the height of foolishness. I'm going to read that again. Symbolic perceptions allow us to see that the real meaning of a crisis lies in showing us what we need to learn about ourselves. Family watching right now. To blame the other players in our drama for helping to teach us what we need to learn is the height of foolishness. If, for example, I need to learn what it feels like to have something stolen from me, then anyone capable of stealing will do as my teacher. Spending my life resenting a particular teacher, quote unquote, waiting for the moment when I can punish the thief or make him or her feel guilty for all my years of mourning my loss, ultimately interferes with my learning process. That's deep. So that's saying that if you were looking for love and then somebody came in your life, broke your heart, well, how will you know truly what love is? Because now the next person that you come, you know exactly what to look for through yourself and through the other person. So that experience was that one person that didn't go so well. Don't blame them. Thank God, because that was a learning experience. You wanted to find love. Don't get mad with God how he works love your way is what I'm trying to say. There's a lesson with everything. Spending my life, the author says, resenting a particular... we passed all that. No one has understood the principle better than the Dalai Lama, who has repeatedly said that he is grateful to the Chinese for forcing him into exile, because it has taught him the value of compassion, given that the Tibetan diaspora has enriched the West with an unprecedented influx of gifted teachers willing to share their mystical knowledge. We should be grateful as well. So even though the Chinese communists kicked him out, he wouldn't feel salty on the Chinese communists. He said, thank you. Because now I learned a better deal on how to forgive people. And we, on the Western civilization, should be thanking the Chinese communists too. Because if it wasn't for the Dalai Lama's exile, then we wouldn't be getting this information that we have. And these great teachers from the Eastern civilization coming down here and blessing us with the knowledge. So it works out all the way around. The Dalai Lama has never said that China was justified in what it did, and he has never stopped fighting passionately for the liberation of Tibet for communist rule. The two attitudes, gratefulness and struggle against injustice, are not mutually exclusive. Working with symbolic sight is one of the greatest skills we can develop, family, because it gives us, and I quote, perceptual leverage. We enter a more detached state of consciousness, interpreting the events in our lives as spiritual challenges that are meant to enhance our growth. This is especially true of illness, as we see in chapter 6. Even though so many of life lessons are enormously painful, my family, at the core, they are nonetheless positive. The capacity to view a crisis, irrespective of the physical details, requires acceptance of the events and a willingness to take up your bed, quote, take up your bed and walk. That's a church quote. Take up your bed and walk, quote, end quote. Once you begin walking again, particularly through the symbolic realm, you will become positioned for healing and will never again return to using your ordinary perceptional skills. Quote unquote, once you go within yourself, like Christ says, and know that God is everything, not your will, but God's will. Not your will, but God's will, the God within you. Once you know that, then you don't have a doubt within yourself into this real world, or so-called real world. You don't have to question nothing. Why would you? Because you know God is everything. And you are a co-creator, and you are a child of God. So why are you even stressing this real world? Once again, that's why I asked you at the beginning, how are you doing? Under the influence of Aquarian energy, then, we will construct an entirely new model of health. We will expand it beyond its Piscean definition, as I quote, the absence of physical illness, and realize that health includes our thoughts, occupation, relationships, philosophy of life, spiritual practice, and much more. The Aquarian model does not measure health solely by the level at which our physical bodies functions. Let's read that again. The Aquarian model does not measure health solely by the level at which our physical body functions. Our management of our entire energy system becomes another criteria. From that perspective, one can be physically limited but very healthy. Like the actor Christopher Reeve, who, in the acceptance of his physical tragedy, has been able to release his spirit as a source of inspiration to so many. Rest in peace to Christopher Reeve. If you know who Christopher Reeve is one of the original Supermen back in like the 60s and whatnot. Ended up getting paralyzed, but even then he was still in good spirit and helped a lot of people, even when he was paralyzed. I remember that. It was like him and Mother Teresa and Princess Diana. I remember their energy when I was a kid throughout the 90s, that they just gave great energy. Christopher Reeve, who in the acceptance of his physical tragedy had been able to release his spirit as a source of inspiration to so many. In line with Aquarian holism, we have come to see that we are not the only form of conscious life on the planet. In ways we may not fully understand, we are energetically linked to every other form of life, whether animal, insect, plant, or microbe, As our research into the realm of energy expands, we will discover that our personal health is influenced by the vibrational patterns of our entire global society and environment. Unfortunately, we long ago passed up our chance to take the wisdom path, quote unquote, in dealing with environmental dilemmas. So it says we had a chance to get it right, but I guess we chose not to. We are now destined as a global community to take the woe path, on which we will be forced to change many of our habits to avoid global environment, economic, and health-related disasters. We got to get it together, people. That's all it's saying. That's all it's saying. We got to get it together. And man, we're almost done. I thought this was going to be an hour, but we got it done together. So I'm very happy. I thought this was going to be a longer presentation. Thank you for your patience, my family. Let's keep on going. From a symbolic perspective, however, these crises and the changes we may be forced to make will also mark the closure of the Piscean parent-child pattern and the emergency of the Aquarian partnership pattern. Bye, bye, bye. Packing our bags, and we said bye to the Piscean age. Let's read that again. From a symbolic perspective, however, these crises and the changes we may be forced to make will also mark the closure of the Piscean parent-child pattern and the emergence of the Aquarian partnership pattern. We are witnessing the end of the dependence of individual on government. Wow. Hold up. Wait a minute. Miss Carolyn, what you say? We are witnessing the end of the dependence of the individual on government, typified by our rethinking of the American welfare system along with Social Security and medical entitlement programs. Maybe that's what Trump doing. Trump said it was a golden age, and Trump can't say it's a golden age without knowing about the Aquarian age. It's impossible. I'm sorry. He knows exactly what I know. Once again, from a symbolic perspective, however, these crises and the changes we may be forced to make will also mark the closure of the Piscean parent-child pattern and the emergence of the Aquarian partnership pattern. We are witnessing the end of the dependence of the individual on government, typified by our rethinking of the American welfare system, along with Social Security and medical entitlement programs. We have even begun to see the first hopeful signs that the Piscean fascination with chemical medicine, which produced the myth that science holds the keys to all physical mysteries, is coming to an end. Fauci. Dr. Fauci. Coming to an end. In its place, my family, is emerging an Aquarian model that views health and healing as a lifestyle in which treatment for illness includes every part of life. At the same time, however, some misleading Aquarian myths regarding health are being introduced among them. The belief that illness can be healed by the power of the mind alone and that a tranquil spirit can stop the aging process. The mind alone, without the aid of the human spirit and emotions, is limited in its influence on the body. And let me say this, shout out to everybody in New Age, but as a metaphysician, I am New Thought. New Thought and New Age are totally different. New Thought been around since the days of Pythagoras and Plato, Sir Francis Bacon, all the greats, right? So what I'm saying is at the end of the day, you have to do more than just say that I can do this with my mind. You got to put the work in. You must put the work in. Now, let's keep on going. The mind alone, without the aid of the human spirit and emotions, is limited in its influence on the body. And although the unity of body, mind, and spirit can indeed retard the deterioration of the physical body, we have yet to prove that we can prevent drastic change as our physical appearance or its ultimate disintegration. In isolating these astrological ages of Aries, Pisces, and Aquarius, and identifying each with an expansion of the scope of human consciousness, it's easy to misconstrue the progression of human growth as strictly linear. Truth, especially spiritual truth, is rarely so simple, of course. In some ways, the ages have a cycle quality or cycle quality that makes their progression resemble a spiral more closely than a straight line. The global unity of the Aquarian age, for instance, mirrors the tribal unity of the Aryan age, but with much more positive consequences. And both of these eras may reflect the unity of the fabled golden age of goddess culture, when civilization worshiped essentially one feminine divinity. on the many manifestations, when neither sex was dominant and when the prevailing mode of social interaction was partnership and cooperation. For reasons that remain unclear, this seemingly idyllic IDYLLIC culture was not intended to survive as it was. Perhaps humanity had to progress through cycles of creation, destruction, and recreation similar to those of Hindu cosmology to get where we are today. To be sure, mistakes have been made along the way, but there is no mistake in the overall pattern of our development. We are here for a reason, and it is up to us to learn from our collective past. One thing we will certainly need to learn is how to recognize and work with individual and symbolic power, and to become fluent in the language of energy to speak chakras, as I put it. At the same time, we must be able to integrate the three forms of power, tribal, individual, and symbolic, that they have evolved during the Aryan, Piscean, and Aquarian ages, because they are all at work in this. They are all at work in us simultaneously. In the next chapter, we will begin discussing the shift from tribal to individual and ultimately symbolic power, and identifying some of the signs by which you can recognize the transformation in yourself. That wraps up the Aquarian age, the age of unity, the age of unified consciousness and symbolic power. We are here. Embrace your power. Peace.